Hey, it's Sarah Jane, and I have a question for you. I want to ask you if you can relate to jumping out of your own skin, like when a balloon pops or fireworks go off, or in my case today, being in a round pen with a horse that just wanted to kill me and feeling my hyper aroused state go into complete shutdown. So in this Facebook Live today, I want to just explore some of the ways that you can remember and also know what hypervigilance is, and some simple ways to get back to a place of trusting that you've got it and that you can calm your nervous system down. And also the contrast of that which is learned helplessness or shutdown. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm Sarah Jane, fondly known as the Trust Doctor or a traumatologist, and I help people and animals who've been affected by unresolved trauma and chronic illness to really feel in order to heal, to follow their body's natural impulse and use somatic experiencing and also root cause resolution, knowing what secure attachment is for you, what creates safety, how you create safety for yourself in places where there's chaos, that you perhaps don't know how to keep your center or know your stake and use the tools that are available to you. So firstly, I want to just say hi. Just introduce yourself if you're here. I see that there are some people on. And if you have any questions about this, just post them in the comments, because these conversations and consciousness wouldn't be what they are if you didn't show up and hold space for me to create a better world. Because at the end of the day, we all want better, don't we? So, big breath. What is hypervigilance, and how does it affect you? Because it affects us all differently. And for me, I grew up in a bush war in Zimbabwe where bomb drills and convoys and bombing were a very normal way of being. And now I live in a country, I live in South Africa, where most people live in a state of shutdown. They're in a state of learned helplessness because they feel like they have no choice to change their circumstances. And they're on the fear alert all the time. And that hypervigilance is either very extreme or excessive. So we're, literally every time a bomb goes off, a balloon goes off, we think we're going to die. And this is that state of being high or on. Your cortisol's pumping and you're abnormally alert to potential danger or threat, right? You don't know what is real fear and what is irrational fear. And this can be caused by PSTD. And if you haven't already listened to it, go back and listen to my YouTube video where I talk about the difference between PSTD and soul loss, right? With soul loss, there's always PSTD, but not all PTSD has soul loss. So a lot of people label this as mental illness. And I was misdiagnosed as manic depressive bipolar 2 when I was just going through a very normal process of awakening, right? Where I'd been spiritually divorced and shut down due to my circumstances. And remember, I always say it's like you are the gun and your environment is the trigger. So we all have our own story around what that looks like for us. And it can cause us to be extremely sensitive to our surroundings. And if you're part of my tribe, you already know you're a highly sensitive, empathic, soft-bodied horse, right? You're prey more than your predator. And I know it can cause us to be very sensitive to our surroundings and even perceive dangers that are not real. Right? That's hearing a thump in the night and assuming that someone's coming to kill you in your bed, which is a very real threat in this country. Hi, Eva. Oh, I lived that situation. Yeah. I'm so glad you did. You have so much to share with the world, and I am so grateful to have you in my tribe, because together we can go so much further than apart. So thank you. And I'd love to know some of the ways that you actually got out of that and saved yourself, because this is epidemic right now. And because this can cause us to be on high alert for long periods of time, it's so exhausting to our bodies and our adrenal systems. And if you don't know what your adrenal system, that's your little adrenals that sit on top of your kidneys. And remember, in the consciousness of our organs, endocrines, and body parts, just as a side note, your nervous system doesn't know the difference between fear and excitement. It's the same thing. When we're releasing cortisol like this, it can cause us to be really jumpy and very easily agitated, where we're constantly on edge, and it makes sleep very difficult. So I know that one really well. You know, I am a long-term sufferer of insomnia until I actually learned to use the tools that I know work and that I've got results for in my own life, like the trust process and how to neuromodulate and come off that high arousal state into the rest and digest state. So if you're listening to this and you're saying yes, give me a hell yes, because oftentimes you might find yourself in unhealthy coping skills and the addiction, right? And addiction shows up in lots of ways, where maybe we're drinking a little bit more often, or we're binge eating, or you're zoning out on Netflix. Anything to numb yourself out so that you don't actually have to be on edge anymore, when your body is actually saying, I'm the canary in the coal mine. I'm singing and saying something's not right here. Something's out of alignment. And allowing yourself the space, or the stake, you know, literally putting your stake in the ground and saying, okay, what's really going on here? And really getting curious about that from a place of childlike wonder. Because when we were children, we knew how to follow our body's natural impulse until it was, you know, beaten or programmed out of us. And I know that people often say that they haven't had any trauma in their life. And I want you to know that it's not always in the even weather. It's not always a big trauma. Okay. Like the ones that I talk about in the adverse childhood experiences of death of a parent, or divorce, or incarceration of a family member. But it's more about the toxic, chronic, unpredictable stresses, right? It's the accumulation of lots of small traumas, or these neuronets, where we have one big trauma and then we go through life collecting evidence that matches that, and how to get out of that. So be sure to watch my other videos on gaslighting and narcissistic abuse, something I know very well. And also all the red flags on how you can sort of recognize if you are being emotionally or verbally abused. Because trauma, for me, what I know about trauma is that when we're bumped out of our resilience zone, meaning that we don't have the tools to calm ourselves, to neuromodulate ourselves back down, to come off that high arousal and down. Thanks, helpful to hear. Yeah, thank you, Melody. Nice to have you here. You know, when we don't know how to come back down, this is where something that happened to us 20 or 30 years ago suddenly comes up as a full-blown healing crisis. And that could be cancer, it could be an autoimmune disease. It doesn't matter what it looks like, but we really have to get back down to the root cause of what created that in the first place. And this is where I love horses. They're such great teachers, and they've saved me many times from actually taking my own life or spinning out completely. Because our fight-flight response is what mobilizes us to protect ourselves. And this is where horses that are prey animals are so good at mirroring back the lies and the limitations and the self-harm that we do to ourselves, because they're prey animals, right? It's their natural instinct to run like hell away from the threat. And then, you know, it's Monty Roberts taught me is kind of like a 5 kilometer radius before they actually stay and they start to process what's happened to them. So, just know that if that response continues for a long time and we don't get any reprieve from it, that's the cortisol, that's the belly bloat, that's the brain fog, that's the parts where you can't sleep, where you're not rational in your reasoning. Because if we're unable to run away or fight back, and that's what happened to us as children, that's where we go into a freeze or a shutdown response. And that's dissociation, right? It's the feeling like we're cut off from our surroundings. Everything's just a big blur. We don't really, we're not able to actually notice what's true, what's a real threat and what's a perceived threat. Because you saw the bear once, every time you go into the forest, you see the bear. So just like fight or flight, this helps us to survive what's going on because there are other options available for us. And the whole goal of trauma therapy is to practice bringing ourselves out of the fight, flight, freeze and back into this resilience zone. So the more that we do that, the better we get at it. And the larger our resilience zone gets, right? This is the expansive zone where we actually start to see the gift in trauma. We see the gift in our depression or our anxiety because we're able to push pause on the world and look at, is this true? And also, does it belong to us? Because a lot of time, if you're highly sensitive, I've just got the God bums, we're picking up on other people's thoughts, feelings, and emotions. So when you're able to do that, then you're more easily able to handle the unknown, the things that you have no control over. And the more that the life stresses come up, we don't get thrown out or bumped off of our resilience zone. And hypervigilance is on the total opposite spectrum to shutdown. And both of them are just as dangerous to our health. So how can we overcome it and come back down to rest and digest and establish our own safety? And good. So if you have any questions, just let me know. I'm just checking on the feed here. But here's some ways to get you to go forward and actually start to create your own freedom. It's Freedom Day here in South Africa. And it's interesting because there's so much programming and there's so much of the contrast, again, of people saying, the Malemalot saying, kill the whites, get them out of the country, which is a very African colonial, ancestral, cultural inheritance that's running very strong right now, where people are so numbed down to it that it's normal conversation to go, yeah, you know what? Everybody's had an armed robbery. Everybody's had a gun to their head at some point or the other. And the common comeback is, well, at least they didn't kill you, and that's not okay. In my world, that's not okay. And the other side of it is this legacy of exacerbating shutdown or exacerbating the other side of it, which is complete fight. So first we have to recognize what our triggers are. This is the practiced mindfulness. This is about listening to your body and noticing where you feel it and not leaving your body, because when you've had a shock or trauma, or those virtual vibrational reality systems where you're just kind of constantly being smacked, you're desensitized to the reality of where you are functioning from. So the better we get at recognizing the early symptoms, because everybody's different, but if it's our anxiety that's causing us to feel this way, it could be our anticipation of somebody judging us or somebody's going to hurt us. So if it's our PTSD that's causing these feelings, it could be a loud noise. It could be feeling trapped somewhere. It could be recognizing what's causing this feeling for you and finding a way by going into your body, pushing pause, slowing everything down, and noticing what's underneath the fear or the anger or the rage. And I saw this with this horse that I was working with today, is that he's never, ever been given a choice. There's never been a two-way conversation of, are you with me? Do you want to do this? It's always been dominance. It's always been hurtful. It's been pain. So he wanted to kill me today. He was like stomping his feet. He was rearing up. And I found it quite difficult, based on my own trauma, to actually put my adrenaline down so my learning could go up and say, could we have a different conversation here? So when you recognize what's causing the feeling for you to want to kill or to want to lash out or to want to run away, that's when we start to be able to change. It's always the first step is acknowledging that you feel the way that you do, and then going to the part of you that feels threatened. And it's probably pre-7-year-old, right? Because that's the time when we actually created a lot of these thoughts, feelings, and emotions as truth, right? And then we spend the rest of our lives trying to make it true. So, finding ways to self-soothe until the hypervigilance goes away. Or if it's for your animal, it's about using weighted blankets, about using calming music, which is one of the reasons I bought my Rav drum, because it just spoke to a part of me that's very old. It's calling a friend. It's about asking for what you need. And I suggest, if this is triggering you, just listening to me now, just pause it and go over to my website and take the ACE test at Access Your True Nature to see if your adverse childhood experiences are too high, and how to start to, once you've acknowledged and identified that this is where you are, then you can actually start doing the training to overcome unresolved trauma. So just be aware of how you hold that in your body and really feel it. Even if it's I always talk about 1 degree shifts, holding yourself in that place of tension before you start to look at release, right? Tense and release is one of I think you can find it on my SoundCloud account, but it is part of my Out of the Blues program, 21 days to reset your nervous system. But just be aware, where you're afraid to speak up, or you're biting your tongue and gritting your teeth, or clenching your hands ready to fend off attack. And be the detective. Get curious about yourself, where you're looking for any kind of evidence to support or deny your feelings. So, noticing the voice that says hearing a noise and finding your keys that fell off the counter will prove that it's not a burglar. A burglar? Well, how do you say that? Burglar? I don't know. My brain is fuzzed tonight. But, look at where you're looking for evidence to support or deny your feelings. If your dog is barking in the middle of the night, get up. Don't tell him to be quiet. Get up and go check what he's barking at. And then give yourself a minute to respond. And be patient, be kind, tread gently on yourself. Because it takes time to calm and soothe your nervous system. And also don't forget to say, thank you, dog. Thank you for alerting me to that. And also set yourself up for success with your dog, that you say to him, don't just bark at anything. Don't bark at the birds or anything going by, but really only bark for me when there's something that I need to pay attention to, because they're in our lives to support us in this evolution of our being. So remember to say well done and thank you to your animals when they're actually alerting you to a real danger. And know that you have to use this muscle to create your own safety and implement it daily. That's why practice and rituality and the training is so important, because otherwise it's just information. Okay. And we live in a world where we are bombarded with information, and it gets really confusing. So just breathe and take a minute to respond, not react. Tell yourself it's okay to feel this way, and that you're not letting it take complete control over your system. It takes practice. but you can evolve, you can expand, and you can start to support yourself in controlling those old addictive systems and symptoms. So if it means adding in the self-soothing that we just talked about, be happy about it, because you should be able to slowly get better and better at calming your nervous system down, just by assessing all that you are, all that you're feeling, everything that you're knowing, and going deep down. You have the ability to choose to not be affected by it. It's a new muscle, just like interspecies communication, non-verbal communication. When we came into this world, we came in pre-verbal. We knew how to get our parents to feed us. We knew how to get our parents to keep us safe. And it's all non-verbal. And this is what animals are so beautiful at teaching us. Their medicine is so strong. So it's about slowing everything down and knowing that you have the power of choice to choose something different. Okay. So even having a plan in place for when you are triggered can help you get started. And know that you don't have to do this on your own either. You know, it's like seeing a professional that you trust, getting exposure therapy. They're all good options if you're struggling with hypervigilance or learned helplessness. So getting somebody that meets you there and can create that place of safety, which is part of my trust process. It's just like, I'm holding the space. You can be calm and peaceful here. I've got you. Is the leadership that we all want, right? You can have that for yourself. So I don't want to go too long, which is really funny. I am the joke of my own reality, because I go long. I don't do things in a short way because I'm an auditory processor. So I hope you're staying with me. Just checking the comments here. But, you know, I want to speak a little bit about learned helplessness, and I want you to flip it into learned hopefulness. Because, like I said earlier today, I was out working with a beautiful big horse. He's only about 6 years old. His name is Big Red, and he has this lovely little 8-year-old person who really wants him to be with her because he wants to, not because he's been, you know, had the spirit smacked out of him. She wants to have a relationship with him. I'm always so grateful that I get to work with the most amazing, kind people that get this woo-woo stuff that people are so quick often to dismiss. And I have the opportunity to really witness those bonded moments with elephants and cheetahs and rhinos and elephants through my trust process. And oftentimes, you know, these are animals that have been highly traumatized. And I constantly witness this incredible mistreatment of life, both for human and animals on a daily basis. Not just living in a country where most people are shut down, but animals that come from, you know, wild ones that have been beaten into submission, like these horses, or elephants that also have been taken away from their mothers very, very early, and then bought into this whole money-making machine. Lions the same in South Africa, where, you know, their bones are feeding the Chinese market, and trophy hunting is higher than it's ever been before. And these orphan elephants and rhinos that I work with are completely shut down and distressed. And a lot of time with people, it's from these experiences and my sort of integration of a holistic sort of way of working with people that's somatic experiencing. It's pre-verbal. It gets people and animals through going back and remembering trust that I really want to speak to today, which is this learned helplessness and this shutdown and this conditioned shame response that is very much like a baby elephant that is pulled away from his mother, chained up, and is taught, as are a lot of lions and tigers. Thank God, circuses, people are like you are standing up and saying no to circuses, where animals are doing things that are totally out of their nature. And the way that they do this is with bull hooks and inflicting pain and through isolation and prodding and torture, or the way that people break horses, unfortunately, is still epidemic, right? Where it's dominance over rather than a two-way conversation, where the animal wants to be with you because you feel good, you feel safe. And this is the trust process. And where they learn to become submissive, so that animals, elephants that are chained to this piddly little post that they could so easily pull up, or a horse that is constantly beaten into submission, where their soul is broken, which is why they call it breaking a horse. It just breaks my heart, but that's not helpful to the animal. But just think of it like this: when an elephant or a lion or a tiger or a horse or a little person grows up, and for example, just say that I saw this with the wildfires in America recently, where the fire is raging through the stables of these beautiful horses that people have invested a lot of money in, the racehorses and everything else, or there's a fire in their enclosure. And despite the elephant or the horse's colossal strength and their innate natural instinct to flee from danger or death that fire would bring, they don't do anything because they're so shut down. So they don't break the chains. They remain completely frozen. There's like nobody. It's the 100-yard stare that they talk about with soldiers that have had PTSD from conflict and war. It's a conflict of impulses that are both natural and conditioned that keep that animal or that person stuck and at the point of dying, right? Because the flames are going to burn them up unless somebody comes to rescue them. And this you can learn more about in my trust process or my animal communication home study course over on my website. But just to stay with it today is, what I just described with the elephant or the horse that's been successfully trained in a term that I use called learned helplessness. It's the obedient horse. It's the animal that's so shut down that they don't know how to be a horse or an elephant or a lion anymore. And it's, million-year-old reptilian brain, primal prey instinct to run for safety or flight. And horses hold that still. Other animals, not so much, but horses are so sensitive. And they remember that they're prey animals, and they'll do anything to keep themselves safe. So we want them to do what we want them to do. But if they have been beaten into learned helplessness, if they're given the freedom, like I gave this horse today in the round pen, to run and kick and buck and be a horse and just let all that repressed anger and fear out, and they don't know what to do. This is where so many people in the horse community say, oh, that's a dangerous horse, you must put them down, which is very sad because we've created that. But in that sort of scenario of the chained elephant or the obedient horse, which I don't know, it happens in reality too many times to admit, yes to elephants in circuses and work camps and logging operations and zoos, and the elephant or the lion or the cheetah or the horse, whatever it is, their innate impulse has been rerouted, right? It's sent so down underground in this place of that pain. They've got to avoid pain at all, any opportunity they can, that they will always go towards the pleasure and away from pain. So this programming goes so deep, and why I'm speaking about this sort of brutal taming of elephants or breaking horses, or, it's awful. And it has almost inconceivable consequences, because it draws a very sharp parallel to how brutal and inhumane and life killing, right? It's soul sucking, the effective conditioning of not so much in the animals, but in people, of shame can be. These are the people. I remember seeing a movie once, and I can't remember what it was called, but it was about a woman who had been abducted by a man. And what is that syndrome called? Stockholm syndrome, where she actually had a child in captivity while she was in this small room, and how she learned to survive by being in that place of complacency, of learned helplessness, and how she eventually got out of that, because her primal instinct was to protect herself and her son later on, but also to get out of there. And she did. And it's an amazing movie. If I remember what it was called, I'll post it below. But, how often the case of the elephant or the horse rings true for those made to endure that sort of learned helplessness, or that shame, chronic conditioning. Shame is more a human thing. It's not really an animal thing. But, it does highlight how limiting it is, that if it's not nearly extinguishing that old powerful survival circuit in the nervous system, it literally kills us, right? Our immune system gets diminished, and we feel this hopelessness, where the only reason that I can, die a slow death because they're not alive, there's nobody home, is in just going back into that place of giving up the ghost, actually. So, it's not a new concept, but it's viscerally and undeniably, it's the reality that when you encounter a being of colossal proportions, or strength, or intelligence, or nurturance and instinct, submit to the care and the whim or the abuse of the handler, that's probably most of the time an eighth of their size. The force and the raw instinct and the intelligence is time and time again. And it breaks my heart to see it, but there is hope. So if, going back to the people part of this, your body registers at least two crucial things while you witness all of this. The first one is how incredibly dependent mammals are upon bonded relationships to survive and to be motivated, regardless of whether they're healthy or abusive relationships. We see this in child abuse. As I said, we see this in Stockholm syndrome, and we see this in the broken horse, or the animal in captivity, the lion, the elephant, that's being trained to do ridiculous things, where we anthropomorphize animals, which is so wrong. And the second part is, how easily our survival instincts, our circuits, our neural circuits can be hijacked by alternative programming. It's just like literally beating the soul out of you. So how fear and shame are awarded the prize for being the most effective hijackers is always the body's natural impulse to doing whatever they need to do to keep them alive. And I remember when I had these, 3 armed people that broke into my house when my daughter was 2, and put a gun to her head. I remember that moment where I didn't go into learned helplessness, but I went into the survival instinct of shutdown, to just go through the motions like it was this big dream, to just do whatever they said in order to keep my family safe. So, that's really how fear and shame are always rewarded. It's the prize for being the most effective hijackers of our nervous system. So, reaching out to the elephant or the horse, that, by entering with a fireproof vest, the flames that are burning down the stable and are going to take their life from smoke inhalation, where they're in this state of shutdown or total freeze, helping to unlock the chains, guiding the elephant or the horse out and away from the imminent danger of the falling embers. This is what the trust process is all about. And then we can start to work on the personal prescription to feel so that they can heal. This is what my work is all about, is root cause resolution, where chronic trauma survivors, animal, people, we get under the shame, we get underneath the fear and the codependency and the addictive coping patterns of learned helplessness or being obedient or being the people pleaser start to fall away. So as dramatic as this description of all of this has been, I just found it really apt today, remembering again being in a ring with a horse that was so afraid of pain, where his nervous system, all he could associate the round pen with or the arena with was pain, to the point where he didn't flee. He was strong and resilient enough to actually confront me and look for, can I trust this person to hold the space for me to feel this fear and everything else that was going on? I had to say to him, I've got you. You can be peaceful here. To the point where he was rearing up and striking out at me, where I eventually sat down in front of him. And he realized that, oh, wow, maybe I don't have to do this anymore, because this person is going to be the lead mare for him, right? To give him safe boundaries. Children need this too. They need safe boundaries in order to thrive. And I could see the inner workings of his nervous system start to not disassociate and shut down again, or feel like he needed to kill me in order to survive, but to a place where he wanted to be with me, because I felt better than being alone in that arena. And it's the same for people. It's just like when you start to speak to the level of that distorted response to life affirming behavior like that, it's the tremendous silent suffering. And in people, this is what shame survivors endure, right? It's my fault. They start to love the persecutor, because that for them meant staying alive and giving them a different choice. And in this place with this beautiful horse that so wants to be loved and so wants to be safe. Apparently he has separation anxiety. That's Stockholm syndrome. Right? It's the pain over the pleasure. And, there are incredible stakes that learned helplessness and chronic shaming impose upon those who survive it. So once you know that the needs that are driving the behavior, then you can start to begin your journey of healing and learning to meet your own needs in effective and sustainable ways, because you are the adult that grows the child part that's stuck in the trauma, that's stuck in the shame, the blame, and the regret, and the hypervigilance or the shutdown, the learned helplessness, the people pleaser, the one that gives themselves up, literally gives up the ghost. The Holy Spirit leads. And knowing that, you can't expect yourself, just like I can't expect that horse to just snap out of it. You can't just quit old habits without fulfilling the needs that are driving them. So this is where the compassion and the empathy and the forgiveness are so vital to returning to trust, or to returning to your own true nature. And this is why white knuckling and willpower aren't effective strategies. They do nothing for the underlying need for safety, for security. So once you know what the needs are, then you can start asking yourself questions. So I'm kind of toing and froing between how you can help your animals be safe and secure and come down off that hypervigilance. But in the case of you or your child, a great question to ask is, are my current needs or are my current actions meeting my needs? And if they're not, then we can start to get curious about what actions can I take to meet myself there, in that point of shutdown, in that point of being very afraid. Is this making sense? I hope so. Don't try to overhaul your entire life with this one question, because that isn't effective or sustainable. That's why I'm always looking for 1-degree shifts. They're subtle shifts, but they make huge differences, whether that's for you or your animal companion. So always start where you are, because you can't fly from New York to LA if you're in Ohio, and you can't fly from Johannesburg all the way to California. We need to refuel, we need to rest and digest. So when you ask these questions and you start being really honest with yourself, right? The truth bombs that I love to talk about what it takes to meet your needs, or to meet your horse's needs, or to meet the needs of your animal that's come from a shelter that doesn't know how to trust people because people mean pain, then you can soften into the compassion and the kind eyes of saying, you know what? You can be peaceful here. I've got you. I'm holding this. You can be peaceful. And this is so beautiful to see in the trust process, when they suddenly you see them start licking and chewing, and their breath changes and they can't keep their eyes open. And then it's like, oh my God, and the beautiful experience when you get them to lay down and completely go into that deep theta state of healing, where their bodies start to shake off and complete the trauma cycle of running away or fighting, or what Peter Levine calls waking the tiger, is you complete that from a body sense. And your nervous system gets to wake up to, gosh, I'm still alive and I'm still in this arena with this person and I'm not in pain. That is the value of the trust process. Or one of my clients a couple of days, I think yesterday, said, oh my God, thank God for the trust process, because it had saved her from being attacked by a Rottweiler that was really aggressive and going for her out on the street. So, it's so powerful when you can do this work. And the good news is that the malleability of our neurobiological circuits, right, our hyperarousal allows us conditioning to take hold, and it works both ways. So if we can condition other mammals and other humans into learning the trust process, into learning a life-killing program, we can teach them to respond to a life-affirming one, right? Isn't that beautiful? So again, this is often a very important phase of my trauma to truth-telling and nervous system repair work. And that's the phase that I call, in my Out of the Blues, to secure attachment. We go from learned shutdown because we start to trust that we are in control. So if you want to learn more about those 7 key principles of holistic learning and living, where you turn trauma into dharma, and you turn your shame into shine, and you give that to your animals that are such incredible companions with their own soul contracts and their own fears and their own places of instability, because we're projecting and putting our assumptions on them to be somewhere where they can't possibly be, until we get to hold space and be patient for them to get it. So going at the pace of the animal, or going at the pace of your physical body, is so key in this. I hope you join me tomorrow for a free webinar where I'm really going to help you remember, right? It's not a learning, it's a remembering who you really are, who you are in your true nature, and how you can start to set healthy, flexible boundaries, and also create secure attachment for yourself, regardless of where you find yourself. in life, in all, the topsy-turvy chaos and all the crap that's going on outside of you. So I hope you join me for that, because I know that although you can't change what's happened to you, you can change how you transform through it, right? How you move from trauma into a place of returning to trusting that your body is your greatest consciousness facilitator, and you've got this, okay? I want you to feel again so that you can heal and live a fulfilled, happy life, because we all want better. We all want to thrive. And, the universe itself is telling us to trust that. So that's it for tonight. I wish you a happy, soulful Sunday wherever you are. And I hope you join me. And also, if you're busy tomorrow, it's going to happen 7 o'clock South African time. There will be a recording, but you must register for it. But, go ahead, take that first step. If any of what I've said is resonating with you, go over to Access Your True Nature and take the ACE test. See how high your ACE score is, because then you can actually start to be the grown-up. You can start being that sense of security from the maternal and the paternal, where you actually get to change the future as the ancestor of future generations that haven't been born yet. You get to stop trauma in its tracks. You get to kick the people-pleasing, pervasive, self-flagellating, self-judgmental parts of you. You're not just doing it for you. That's why I always say, trust you're enough. Trust you're enough for yourself. You're enough for your body. You're enough for your animals. And when you take the ACE test, just by the way, you'll get a download immediately to a workbook where you can start taking the first 7 powerful steps to set yourself free from anxiety, from depression, from helplessness, from not enoughness, from the perfectionistic addiction to all these coping mechanisms you've set back, and begin your journey back to trust and faith and grace and learned hopefulness. That's the power of choice, and it's up to you. So I hope you found that this little ranting, this musing tonight, supportive. Please post your comments and questions below if you have any. Share this with people that might be looking for a little bit of a kick in the pants, a little bit of my fierce medicine, or just a loving place to ask, what would love do? And follow that regardless of what everybody else is saying. Okay. Even in the horse world, so many people are still coming from this place of dominance over, rather than, do we have a conversation? Are you with me? Would this be fun for you to do? Animals want to please us. Your body wants to please you. So allow yourself to open your heart and go there, because there's nothing more beautiful in the world. Brutal and beautiful. But it's a beautiful place to come back to your heart. So I hope you say yes to that. Write yourself your own permission slip and enjoy your Sunday wherever you are. And I will see you tomorrow for the webinar on how to create safety and healthy, flexible boundaries that not only will you thrive and live a fulfilled, meaningful life, but you get to illuminate that for other people. So that's it for me. I send you lots of love. Bye. Mwah.